So greetings, my name is Koji Kato. I'm a group program manager on dev.live. Thank you, first and foremost, for coming. I realize that this is the last session of the day, and you're all very tired. So this session is primarily going to be demonstrations. To keep it lively, the goal of this session is to show you that Windows Live can enrich in your website. To make it even better, it's actually pretty easy. Today, I'd like to walk you through the following. Windows Live Web Services at MIX, Farrellsoft, MSNBC, great partners. They're actually going to show us their product, and we're going to talk about canonical scenarios that you can do today to enrich in your website. Last but not least, we're going to ask Danny Thorpe and Lynn Ayers to come on stage and build an application in front of us. At MIX06 last year, we talked about what we wanted to deliver to you, where we wanted to take you. At MIX07, we're here to talk about what you can do today to enrich in your website. We've been working hard over the last year to expose our services APIs, but we thought that's not good enough. We went the extra step to build web controls that can be placed on any of your websites to use Windows Live to enrich in your website. Both of these layers open up our data centers to you, the developer. For example, there's 8 million new photos appearing on our servers every day. There's 17 petabytes of aerial imagery on our map servers. There's 1 billion authentication operations occurring every day. We desire to make all of this available to you, the developer, under your user's control. The first session tomorrow morning in the keynote room will detail the principles behind data access. There are several sessions tomorrow that will detail the services API layer. This session is going to focus on controls. Now let's see what our partners are actually building. I'd like to welcome Farrellsoft on stage. Please give them a round of applause.
Thanks, Koji. My name's David Cruikshank. I'm director of a software company called Farrellsoft, based in the UK. I'm delighted to be here with my colleague Marco Farrell to talk about our web application, Business IT Online, and how we're leveraging Windows Live technologies to add value to our users. So what is Business IT Online? It's a software as a service for startups and small businesses. And it has a range of modules, including cash flow management, sales and contact management, invoicing, file sharing, and appointments. And our mission is to help small businesses succeed online by providing an integrated experience across a number of resources and tools. So where did we get the idea from? Well, Mark and I started out in business about 3 years ago, and we started off building custom software applications for larger businesses. I was on the road a lot with meetings with clients, and Mark was developing from home, and we were just firing Excel spreadsheet emails back and forth to each other, trying to manage our business while we were serving our clients. This was an incredibly inefficient way of doing business, and we thought there must be a better way to manage our business while we were in different locations. So we went for a search on the web, and we thought, what's out there that really meets our needs, and we didn't find the right application. And we got quotes for VPNs and infrastructure within an office that we could access remotely, and that didn't do what we needed either, and it was very expensive for a small business. So we set about building the application from the ground up, having done a bit of research to check that other people were in the same situation as we were. The key for us was getting the handoffs between the different processes right. It's one of the things that a lot of you will appreciate in a small business is very few people have to do a large number of things, and there's a lot of handoffs between individual activities. So to give you an example, invoicing, for instance, isn't a standalone process. When you create an invoice, you need to draw on customer information for the invoice. You need to send that financial information to your cash flow or accounting application. And you need to put potentially a meeting entry in your diary or a reminder to remind you to follow up once the payment terms have expired and the payment should have been received. So it's very important for our application, in our eyes, to achieve efficiencies in these handoff areas, as much as it is to have feature-rich functionality within the individual modules. So we built the site about 2 years ago, and we've been running it and enhancing it ever since with that in mind. And it's very much focused at the headcount of between 1 and 10 users in the micro business. So I'm not actually going to go into the application. For the purpose of speed, I've got lots of different pages to load, and we've got lots of stuff to cover today. So I've got these pages loaded on a presentation, but effectively it's exactly how the product works in the live environment. You can see that's a home page here, has the 4 modules: calendar, cash flow, contacts, and documents. And through the login page, we get to the internal environment where the 4 modules can be accessed in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to do 2 scenarios. The first scenario where we use Windows Live Control is in the invoicing section under Documents. And what we wanted to achieve is the population of customer information on the actual invoice. The second scenario is downloading contact information stored within Business IT Online down to the Windows Live Hotmail environment. So clicking on Documents, it takes me into the Documents area where I've got 3 online documents. The top one is an online invoice for Microsoft for my services speaking today. Second is a spreadsheet of the master session grid for MIX, and the final one, my travel plans. If I click into the online invoice, you can see I've prepared a template there, but the customer information field just says Microsoft, and there's no information on terms of the line items in the invoice. If I go in to edit that, this is where I can change the individual layout of that invoice. I can have a printed letterhead and so on. But I'm interested in going into the header of the document to modify the customer invoice information. At the moment, as I say, I've just got Microsoft. I could go into my own contact store and see if I've got Microsoft's address in there, but I'm not. I'm going to go into Windows Live, where I know that I've got Koji's email and address details stored. And I select Koji from the Windows Live control and click Send. And it checks that it's a pop-up loads checking that this is the information I want to send from Microsoft's Windows Live environment to our own site. I click Send, and the information loads in the form. If I now save that information, I move on to line items, which is where I fill out the individual line item that I want to charge for. In this case, it's the heavily discounted price of £25,000 for speaking services. So there's the template completed now, and the invoice is fulfilled. Now, at this stage, I could send the email off directly from the system or download it to my local machine. The second scenario where we're using Windows Live is within the Contacts module. And in the Contacts module, you can see that along the top there are a number of functions that help small businesses manage their sales cycle. So they can store leads and prospects within the system. They can progress those leads through a pipeline management area and store individual contact history with individual leads in the system. They can also review invoice history within Business IT Online as well, all in one place. This particular scenario supports the individual who uses Windows Live Hotmail and Windows Live Messenger as their communications tool. As I said earlier, many of our clients work remotely or spend a lot of their time out of the office. So they're using Business IT Online as their remote business application, and they're also, many of them, using Windows Live Hotmail and Windows Live Messenger to communicate with their clients. In this particular scenario, one of our clients was using that scenario to manage communications, and she was a virtual assistant who, in this example, wanted to use Business IT Online as she progressed her leads through the system, but also then wanted to send those details down to Windows Live Hotmail when that lead became a sale and a client. So we have Susan Jenkins here, who's the Fictionary lead. That lead now can be viewed in a pop-up window where all the contact details are viewed. And you can see I was talking about the handoffs between processes. When you're managing your contacts, you also want to potentially be reminded. So there's the CRM functionality of populating calendar with a reminder to say, follow up with Susan to get a signed version of the contract. But in this example, we're downloading to Windows Live. So I click on Connect with Windows Live, and up pop my Windows Live contacts. I click on Send Contact to Windows Live, and I get a change request. This is required to confirm that I actually want to do this and send this information down. Up pops the information that's going to be sent. I click Save, and you can see now Susan Jenkins appears in my Windows Live contacts from where I could be emailing and messaging her. So those are the two scenarios I wanted to show you today. This is how we're using Business IT Online in conjunction with Windows Live controls. I mean, one thing I'm sure many of you have experienced with your web applications is that we have a growing enhancements log, and many things get added to it, and it seems to very rarely shrink. And when we were talking with the guys about incorporating these controls, one of the key factors for us was not changing the environment drastically and not impacting the users in a negative way by overcrowding pages, etc. And as you've seen, the controls are very neat and tidy, and they fit within the workflow quite nicely. They also support our vision of empowering the small business online and connecting their business data in one place on demand. We're going to continue working with the Windows Live team because they're doing some really exciting stuff again around their Hotmail and messaging, as well as their contacts, as you're going to see later in today's session. But I'd very much like to thank the guys for inviting me up here to speak, and hopefully if you'd like to ask any questions about our application, you'll approach us later. Thank you.
That was an awesome demo, David. It kind of tells us how Windows Live Contacts can really be used in vertical scenarios. Now, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, but before that, Mark, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Mark O'Farrell. I'm also a director at Farrellsoft, and I was involved in the build of Business IT Online.
There's two questions. The first question is, how long did it take for you to get the contacts control running in its most basic form on your website?
It was actually very quickly. Given the code that you guys provide on the Windows Live site, dev.live, it was very quick to take that code and adapt it, and we had the control up and running in under an hour.
That's sweet. Second question, how long did it really take you to do a full end-to-end integration of the control into your website?
Yeah, this was the key for us because, as I say, we can be a little bit precious about changes to the application, given that not all our users are actually as savvy as probably everyone in this room. Small business users are often very frightened of technology, and we're very aware of that. So the whole process took a matter of weeks because, as I say, we were very fussy about fitting it into the workflow and how it would be as little as disruptive as possible.
I love your focus on the user. So
Thank you.
So thank you, David. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Now our next partner. So I'd like to welcome Rex Zorkas from MSNBC. Please give him a round of applause.
Hello, hello. Thanks, Koji. I think most of you probably know MSNBC.com is a partnership with Microsoft and NBC. It's a joint venture, co-owned. And we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary last summer. And we're really working right now in the middle of a big redesign, relaunch of the site that started a couple weeks ago. And we'll be continuing out throughout the summer, kind of a staged relaunch, where we're going to be offering a lot of new functionality and branding and new stuff. And we're a really big site. We serve about 1 billion page views a month, and that's about 65 million unique users. So we have a big scale there. And I think when Koji came to us about this idea of using Windows Live Contacts, what really got me excited about it was that we could potentially use it as a starting ground for doing some kind of social networking features around the news environment. So part of the big relaunch is that we recently reintroduced our local news effort. And it's live in a couple markets. If you go to miami.msnbc.com or the Bay Area, you'll see our new site. And I'll just jump to a quick demo. And this will be live. So here's our site. If you went to miami.msnbc.com, you'd end up on this page. And what we're trying to do here is we're really trying to rethink what local news works like, especially on a big national site like this. If you scroll down the page, you start to see that we're really rethinking how a local news site should work. And we're really integrating a lot of other sources of content. And we're basically doing an application type feel to it, such that we're really introducing things that look a little bit more like an RSS aggregator, like blog lines or something, such that people can kind of collapse and control to a little bit greater degree their news, and potentially even add feeds onto the page that are of a local interest to them. And with that philosophy comes the idea that, well, since we're introducing an application to the page, why don't we try introducing some real-time collaboration into the page also? So what we have up here is a Windows Live Control contacts list of me logged in, already logged into this page. And the way it would work is that, let's say I decided that I was interested in this story, and I decided that I want to contact one of my friends on the list about it. I would just open it up, and it pre-populates the message with the actual URL that I'm going to, and I just send it. And now I've just sent it to my friend, Jim, who receives this message and is going to type back something. There. So you see how this works, kind of a real-time collaborative thing. And it allows us to kind of introduce the idea that maybe there's a lot you can do around the areas of social news and collaboration. So that's basically it. One of the key things that was really important for us in integrating this was that this module came with what is effectively, in our minds, a pre-built social network. Everyone has on their contacts list a set of friends that they've already pre-populated. And it's really hard to build that kind of relationship from scratch because everyone signed up for about 20 social news or social networking sites already. And allowing us to kind of take advantage and leverage this pre-populated list was really great for us. So we're really looking forward to seeing what else we can do here, and a lot of great stuff. So thanks, Koji.
Thanks, Rex. That's awesome. When's Seattle going to get it?
Oh, pretty soon. We're trying to figure out some scaling things and making sure that we can get it into all the markets, but soon enough, yeah.
I'm going to skip the first of the two questions because we've kind of answered that in the first like when I asked Feralsoft. How long did it take for you to get the context control integrated end-to-end on your website?
Yeah, just integrating it is really simple. It just takes dropping in some script source and it's there. We have some larger issues to deal with as far as scale and trying to get all of that massiveness to use this control, and a lot of cross-browser type things that we have to figure out, and other kind of conflicts on the page that may occur. But all in all, it really, implementation is pretty slick if we can just figure out how to scale it.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Rex. As you saw, Windows Live is here and today. You can actually build applications against it, as you saw Feralsoft and MSNBC do it. It's also showing you about how to tap into the massive amounts of data and live services capabilities we have in our data centers. For example, there's 263 million active Messenger accounts, and there's 7.5 billion messages flying per day. So by integrating these controls into your website, you get to join that engagement swarm. It's like this swarm of engagement that people have with instant messaging. You get to participate in it, which we believe will enrich in your website. So now let's actually talk about the canonical scenarios that you can do today. The most basic thing is actually to add site search to your website using the search box. You can also push pinpoints of interest on a map and place it on your website. And all of these are available today. And it is pretty easy. There is another set of scenarios which revolve around the user. For example, I want to send a gift to my grandma. I want to make it easy for my friends to add me to their contacts list. I want to share what I'm looking at with my friend who has a similar interest. Feralsoft and MSNBC just demonstrated these scenarios to us. And you can do this today using the Windows Live controls. At this point, I'd like to bring Danny Thorpe and Lynn Ayres on stage to actually build an application for us that will demonstrate building an app using these Windows Live controls. They're also going to tap into the massive amounts of data in Spaces, the 93 million Spaces sites, which has blogs and photos. They're already up here, so you don't need to give them applause.
Thanks, Koji. So this little application is a social mashup that we built in just a few hours using Windows Live Spaces, Virtual Earth, Windows Live ID, and Contacts. It's a travel journal, and you can see that I can do two things here. I can blog about my latest trip, or I can see my friends' travel posts. Pretty cool. But the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in. So this application is actually using Windows Live ID to enable single sign-in across all of the controls that it uses. This enables the authenticated data access scenarios that Koji was just talking about. So I'm going to use my saved account here to go ahead and sign in. So now I come back to the travel journal, and I think that I'm going to blog about my latest trip. So when I enter into the location field, Redmond, you can see that the map actually switches to focus my context on that location.
But we're not actually in Redmond.
Yeah, we're in Las Vegas. So I'm going to blog about MIX and how fabulous it is. So now that I've written up my little blog post, I want to select some photos to go with it, because after all, this is Photo Bug Blog. So here I'm using the Windows Live Spaces control to pick from photos that are already available on my space. And if I scroll down here, I can see that, hey, there's Koji talking at this session. So I'm going to pick Koji. So now I need to make these photos available to this application so this application can work on them. So when I click Send Selected Photos, that is sending the photos from the control to this application. And what's popping up here is a privacy notice that lets me understand exactly what data I'm sending over and allows me to opt in or opt out. Since I trust this application, I'm going to go ahead and click Send. Now that I've done that, I'm going to preview my blog post on this map. So that went ahead and it placed a push pin in Las Vegas. And now I think I'm going to submit. So what this did was it packaged up everything that I just provided to this application, the location, the blog post, and the photos, and it's sending it over to Spaces so that I can actually post this. So on Spaces, I can see a UI that would allow me to review my post, make edits and changes if I want to, or with one click, publish it. So I'm going to go and publish the entry. And success. The entry is published. So now, when I close spaces, and go back to the application, you can see that there's my post. Mix is awesome. So now that I'm done with that, I want to go back and I want to see my friends' travel posts to see what they've been doing. So now this application is using the Windows Live Contacts Control, which you've seen in a few demos now, and it lets me pick which of my friends I want to see the blog posts for. So I'm going to pick these two guys, and then I'm going to send the contacts to the application. And again, I'm going to get the same privacy notice that allows me to control what data I'm sharing with this application. Now what's happening is that the contact control is making available to this application the RSS feeds for each of those contacts. And the application went through the RSS feeds and found the posts that had travel content in them and plotted them on the map. And it looks almost like an error, but somebody has made posts in Antarctica. Oh man, those are real penguins.
Made a wrong turn at Argentina.
Wow, I think maybe we're paying you too much, Danny. So now that I've showed you what this application does, Danny is going to show you how to build it.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, so let's switch over to the slides. That was on slides. Other machine. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, so to build this application, I'm not going to bore you with typing in everything and having to figure out where I missed a semicolon and that sort of thing. I'm going to put in chunks of bite-sized code that we're going to process and cover the highlights of how to build this application. First part is we're going to place the Virtual Earth map control, because that's really going to dominate the whole page layout. To do a Virtual Earth map control, you need to place a div section in your HTML, and that's where the map control will live. And you need to call some JavaScript code to construct the Virtual Earth map object. And to do that, we're going to go over here to Visual Studio and drop in a little bit of code. So this is an HTML page. First thing you need to do is include the map control.js file to bring in the Virtual Earth map code. Here is our div section. It's a very zoomy mouse. With a blog map as its ID. That's where we're going to place the Virtual Earth map. And here we're constructing the Virtual Earth map object, giving it the div section so it knows where to go. And we call load map. That will construct the map and display it in that div section. So let's save this to disk and switch over to the browser and change this to our work.aspx. And there we have it. So here we have a live Virtual Earth map control. The next step is we want to place the Live ID sign-in control on this page. And to do that, we need to set up an app ID, which we've already done. The app ID will identify this application to the login service. We're going to place an iframe on the page and give it a special URL so that it will do all the work for us. And then it will provide to us a unique ID that identifies the currently logged in user. Go down to our insertion point down here. Drop in the live ID frame. So we've got this source property down here, and it's a kind of a complicated URL. Lynn, what's this app ID about?
So the app ID, Danny, you just mentioned was something that we set up before this demo. And it's simply an identifier that the application places in the URL to log in to allow Windows Live ID to know what applications are using authentication.
And this domain name over here looks a little strange too. What's this?
So live-int.com is our integration or test environment. So what that means is that this interface is available right now for testing, but it's not going to be available in production or for public release until sometime this summer.
So we're right on the bleeding edge here.
We sure are.
Now, when this does go into production, is this URL going to change to login.live.com?
Yes, it will.
Okay, excellent. So we've got this iframe placed here. Do we need to do anything else to make this work with the app?
So if this application had a database and we wanted to store data against the unique user ID, we would proceed to get the authentication token from Live ID. We would verify the signature and decrypt that authentication token to get the unique ID. But since we don't have a database and all we're really doing here is single sign-in, we're done.
Okay, so by having this iframe on this page, then our other Live ID controls, our other live controls, will automatically benefit by the Live ID sign-in.
Not just that, but if the user has to navigate out to any Windows Live services the way we did for Spaces, the user will be seamlessly signed in there as well.
Excellent. Okay, so let's save this and switch over to the browser. Reload. Come on, network. There we go. So again, here's our virtual Earth map, and we have the Live ID sign-in control up here. However, it says sign out. Why does it say sign out?
It says sign out because I signed in just a few minutes ago, and I didn't sign out. And one of the advantages of the iframe is that it keeps track of the user's current authentication state for the application, so it doesn't have to do that work itself.
I see. Okay. So because I jumped in here and took over your browser state, and I'm doing my demo in the same browser session.
You're still signed in.
We're still signed in. Okay. Now, if I shut down this browser and started up another one, it wouldn't be signed in anymore because of session state.
Likely not.
Okay. I'm not going to do that right here.
It depends on your user state.
Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to work on the actual geocoding code. Now, geocode is the latitude, longitude associated with a thing or a place. The Virtual Earth map control has a couple of functions that assist with this area. You can do a find location and take a string name of a place and pass that to the Virtual Earth map, and it will convert that into a latitude, longitude using internal databases. The map also has a get center function, which you can just, as the user has placed the map on a particular location, you can say, what is the center of the current map? And it'll give you back a latitude and longitude. We will use that to bind the current blog posting to a specific location on the map. We're going to write a little bit of code to actually post the blog into our Spaces blog area using the Spaces Blogit API. We're going to open a new window so that the user can finish up any additional adjustments they want to make to that code. So back here in Visual Studio, here's our insertion point. I'm going to drop a couple of edit controls, text areas. This one's called blog location. This is where you type in the name of the place you want to go, like Las Vegas, or where you are, let's say. And it calls map.findLocation, passing in the text value of that control. This will position the map at the nearest match to that location. If there are multiple matches, the user will be prompted to pick out which one is the best hit. And we have a couple of other text edits here for title and the text of the body of the control. Now I'm going to drop in a little bit of code for posting the blog. Post blog takes the map center, grabs the latitude and longitude from that, and then passes that through to window open on the Blogit API URL. This means that after we've typed in the name of the place we want to show on the map, we can actually move the map around, zoom in, go to a more specific location, and then when we say post it, it will pull the map center and make that the location of the blog post. Now, since all of this material is going through the URL, if your users are in a habit of writing novels for each blog posting, that might not work so well for going through the URL because the URLs have a finite length. but it works for fine for most postings. You can also see here that we're incorporating the latitude and longitude into that posting. And then we will add in just a little bit more code. This is a little bit of glue code to make shortcuts for get element by ID and to incorporate the photo description into the post. So I will save this, switch over to the browser and reload. And here we have it. Here's the virtual Earth map again, sign out control, a couple of text fields. We can type in Las Vegas, NV, tab, and away goes the map. And there we have. So you already saw Lynn doing this earlier, so I'm not going to walk through all of the steps. We'll just go back to slides over here. Next, we want to place the spaces control on this app. We've already got the blog posting worked out. Now let's put in the selection of photos and incorporate those into the blog as well. We're going to drop in a pseudo HTML element called spaces control, and we'll set attributes on that element to specify how we want it to behave. In particular, we are required to put in a privacy statement URL. We're asking the end user to give us information that is in their private domain, their personal information, and we need to disclose to them what we're going to do with that. This isn't just a nicety. This is required by law in the EU, in the United States, and many other government agencies require these full disclosures of what you're doing with the end user's data. How long are you going to hold on to it? Where are you going to send it, etc. We're going to request from the spaces control that it send us back a particular kind of URL, which is the file access controlled URL. If the user has specified for a particular photo or for all of their photos that they're only visible to friends that are in their messenger list, the file access control URL will respect that privacy setting. So that if it's in a blog and someone clicks on it, it will verify. It'll either go through Live ID or it'll check to see if they're already logged in before it will show them that photo. So this is respecting their privacy settings. Go to our insertion point. Drop in the spaces control. So first thing up here is we need to do two JavaScript includes, one for the web control live.js base code, our bootstrap, and the controls.js. This JavaScript takes care of all of the bootstrap of the control HTML elements. It'll go through and find the spaces control tag, instantiate the objects behind the scenes, bring over the attributes, etc. Does all of the heavy lifting for you. And here you can see the privacy statement. Now, this is a Microsoft demo, so it has a Microsoft privacy statement on it. If I'm writing this application on my own time, or if you're writing your own applications, you need to put your privacy statements in there, okay? The data desired, we're asking for the file access control URI back. We're asking for an English UI. And then the on data event is where we will receive the URLs that the user is sending to us. And the on data event receive photos is down here. We receive an array of URLs in a JavaScript object, and we assign those to a global variable. We'll use that global variable when we're sending the blog text up to Spaces blog. And a little bit of code to preview the blog. This is going to put a push pin on the map and set the latitude and longitude and description so we can see what it's going to look like after the blog is posted. And then we'll also do plot blog. Same code, but using the blog as the input. Placing a pin on the map. All right, we'll save this, switch over to the browser, and reload. So this travel journal, Work ASPX, is running off of localhost, but everything else that we're touching here is coming from the live servers. And actually, it's localhost that's running most of the slowdown here. So we've got our map, we've got our controls, and here is the Spaces photos control. Downloading CSS. Now, because we're using the Live ID sign-in control, we didn't have to log into the Spaces control again. It already recognizes that we're logged in. So as you saw Lynn doing earlier, we can select photos here, send them across, etc. So there we've done a blogging API, a blogging application that works for the given user, a particular user, and shows a particular user's photos on the map. Now let's incorporate their friends. Let's make this into a social application. How much does that affect the way that this application is used and perceived when you can bring in multiple people together and see all of that information put together on the map? So we will place the contacts control in the application using a similar pattern to the spaces control. They have a lot of things in common. We use a pseudo HTML element called contacts control. And again, we're setting attributes on that control to tell it how we want it to work. We need a privacy statement because we are grabbing or receiving the user's personal information and their friends. And we are requesting that it return to us the name field and the spaces RSS content. Now this is a new feature that we added in the past week, that we can return the spaces RSS URL, or we can return the spaces RSS content. Since we're in a JavaScript browser application, having just the URL isn't going to do a whole lot for us, because JavaScript in the browser can't go outside of the current domain. And the RSS is on the live spaces.live.com domain. So we're going to ask for the content, which will have the contacts control send the RSS feed over to our JavaScript as a JavaScript object. We also have some RSS parsing code and digesting all of this into producing more push pins on the map. Oops. We have our insertion point. We drop the contacts control. Again, very similar to the spaces control. We have this, just like in spaces control, we have this channel endpoint URL. Now this is a piece of our cross-domain communication mechanism that is entirely on the client side. And nothing goes across the wire when we're moving data back and forth here between the iframe in our contacts control and the rest of the application. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but if you look in the June edition of the Microsoft Architecture Journal, I have an article in there that goes into deep detail on how this cross-domain, client-side cross-domain communication works. We have the data desired, we have the market, we have the on-data event is where we're going to receive the data that the user selected. There's our privacy statement URL. Let me put in that receive data event. So receive data, again, receives an array of contact objects in JavaScript. First thing we do is we delete all the push pins, we wipe the map clean. For each contact that's in the array, we go look up their RSS feed and plot all of the data points in that RSS onto the map. And we'll drop in a little bit of code to load that text into an XML DOM and to plot the RSS on the map. Now, quite frankly, this last routine is what took most of the time to build the app because we're having to walk through the XML DOM. So here we are loading the XML doc from text and then walking through the DOM, pulling out particular entry, the title, the link, the description. Inside the description, we're going to look for the latitude, longitude. And from that, we can plot this on the blog, on the map. And then we plot it on the blog. Okay, let's save this, switch over to our app, and reload. Now, one thing we haven't really been drawing attention to through all of this is that we're showing this in IE7, that's great, but the contacts control and the spaces control are designed to run across multiple browser types. Firefox and IE7 and 6 are our targets, Firefox 1.5 and Firefox 2.0. And all of this functionality works on all of those browsers, on any platform. Firefox on Macintosh works great. So here we have the contacts. We can select these contacts and toss them up there onto the map. So here's the core of our application code. We put it all together right here. And now what I would do is I would take this but ugly UI that I put together and hand it off to someone who knows a little bit more about UI and actually put together the real demo that you saw Lynn showing. All right, I think that wraps it up. Koji?
So this might just be me, but when I watch this, it reminds me a lot about Office. Office used to be just an application, but it became an reusable application component. It feels as though Windows Live and, for example, Spaces is following a very similar pattern.
So if I could jump in here and ask you a question. Since Koji actually wrote the first draft of this demo application, how long did it take us to build this application with all of these different flying pieces?
So using the controls, I'm cheating, right? Because I'm a part of the team that builds these controls. I know how to use it. But stitching them together to deliver a scenario end to end, that was the more difficult part, and that's what I spent, I think, like 4 hours on a Saturday evening.
And then we got that back, and after getting reviews from Lynn and from me and from other people, we said we really need to work on the UI.
Yes.
So we got some UI help, slicked it up quite a bit, but total time, including the fact that we were in the middle of releasing a new Spaces control, we were doing a major update to the contacts control for HTTPS support, and all of this mix madness that was coming down. All of that notwithstanding, this happened in less than a week.
To be precise, I actually spent 2 days on it. So the first day is just the draft. The second day is the UI cleanup. But again, we're not saying that it's easy to build these end-to-end applications, but we're saying that it's possible, and it's there today.
We spent far longer building the slides than we did building the demo.
Correct. So to wrap it up, going to slides, there's a couple of points that we want to communicate. It's that Windows Live is today and present. You can actually build applications against them today. There's massive amounts of data and service capabilities in our data centers that we want exposed to you, the developer. And third, that these controls, they make it not just only easy, but they also offer prepackaged scenarios and experiences in them. And last but not least, we actually had all of this back and forth scripted, and it was a soapbox, but we wanted to make sure that it was kind of engaging. That's why we did this. Now, if you thought this session was interesting, there's actually more. Wait till you see tomorrow is like what we believe in. There's a lot of events and sessions scheduled for tomorrow, but there's a couple that I'd like to highlight. There's the after hours mashup tonight at 8 p.m., where you can get together with the people who are building these APIs to build mashup applications like what we showed you. Then there's the first session tomorrow morning in the keynote room at 8:30 a.m. using Windows Live Service in your own web applications, delivered by Brian Arbogast, our corporate vice president, where the principles of data access and terms of use will be detailed. Then there's the opening up Windows Live data session at 11:45, which is our secret session that is not publicly known, but we believe it will be very beneficial if you go to this session. And there's Yaron Golan over there who's going to be the speaker who's laughing, but we would definitely want you to attend that session.
It'll be in this room, and we even penciled it in on the billboard out there because it wasn't printed on the billboard either.
Lynn wrote this billboard.
I almost got a camera photo of it too. But, well.
And then there's going to be a couple of open mic sessions tomorrow. Open mic sessions are places where you get to talk with the people who are doing these APIs at this distance, and you can provide candid feedback on suggestions, ideas, thoughts, where you think the technology should go. There is an OpenID open mic session at 2:30 p.m. tomorrow. And then there is a Windows Live Gallery open mic session tomorrow as well. For those people who don't know Windows Live Gallery, it's the place where you go to get customization of your Windows and Windows Live experience. It's becoming one of the most preferred portals for personalization. With that, we'd like to turn it over to you, the audience. And we're looking for inquisitive questions. And there's only one mic there. If the mic is a bit awkward, you can just come up to the stage, or you can catch us in the hallway. We'd love to have a discussion with you. I don't see anybody walking up to the mic.
So tell me, Koji, Why would I want to build a business on live services? Because, you know, services come and go all over the internet. What's different about live services?
I think the difference is that, like Ray Ozzie was mentioning in his keynote this morning, Microsoft is fundamentally a platform company. We believe in delivering a platform, and we believe in commitments. So one of the things that I think was announced is that we are getting into the support level agreement and contracting model. And we're going to start offering that in a more committed basis from 2008. So if you've been using Microsoft products to run your business like SQL Server or Windows 2003 Server, think of Windows Live as being in the same realm. Cool. Any other questions? We're still not seeing anybody walk up to the mic.
Come on, you can do better than that.
So then, last piece of propaganda then from our end. So this is Windows Live Web Services at MIX. It's a poster that kind of shows all the APIs available in the web control layer and the services API layer. And there's people who are going to be in the back of the room who are passing out these posters. So please take them as much as you want.
Koji, we have a question.
Yay.
Hi, Rob.
Hi. I just wondered whether you could say something about Live ID in the context of membership and personalization. I'd like to add those kind of features to my website.
So the question was, you want to hear more about Live ID?
Yeah, I'd like to use Live ID for membership and personalization, and I just wondered what your story was on that.
Great. The interface that we showed you today is available for testing right now, so you can start playing with it. It's in the hands-on lab as well, if you want to go to the hands-on lab and try it out. You can also sign up for it on connect.microsoft.com, and that's available for integration testing today. It will be publicly available starting this summer. So you can actually have a real scenario working end-to-end on it beginning this summer.
Great, but can I get at things like the user's name from the Live ID, or is that does that contravene the privacy issues?
That's a great question. We really care about privacy, and as we're opening up in support of the Windows Live developer platform, we really want to be cognizant of privacy. So in our first release, what you get is a unique ID that identifies the user, but it is not actually their email address. You can ask the user for their email address as you're asking them for the other personalized data, but we aren't giving it to you in the first release. However, we really want to hear feedback from developers such as yourself, and we would look at adding this subject to user control in a future release.
So I think that's pretty important to be able to get at that email address, because otherwise I can't do things like, or can't sensibly do things like ratings, or to put the content creator on my site.
That's great feedback to hear. Thanks for giving it to us.
Now, that unique ID that Lynn's referring to is unique, across your site. So if that user comes back, it'll be the same identifier. It's not necessarily going to be clear text or easy to read, but you can use that to make an association between settings in the application and that particular user.
Great, thanks very much.
Answer your phone. Oh, it's you.
I think it's me. So let's actually close down this session. If you have questions, please come up to the stage.
Did you have a question?
One more.
When I saw you guys demo the Windows Live ID control, I saw there's a app ID in it.
Yep.
So as a third party developer, does that mean I have to have establish some connection or relationship with Microsoft to be able to use that? Like, I assume every third party gets a different app ID. So do I need to register, stuff like that?
You basically go through a really, really brief registration process where you go to a website that we've set up, and you provide us some very minimal details. You get the app ID, and then you provision with us the secret key that we're going to use for encryption and decryption. And it's a really brief process, but it's just there to identify your application to us. It also has a TOU, which you can read. It basically specifies what kind of behavior you're supposed to have on your site. Like, you have to offer the user the ability to sign out. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Okay, cool. I was actually, can I ask another one?
Yeah,
okay.
Keep them coming.
Cool. That question may be for Danny or Koji. I was trying the space photo control on my laptop just now, and I kind of feel I cannot see all the albums I can see on my space, my real space. So I'm wondering what's the reason.
Gallo?
So that's a very cryptic answer, Danny.
So sorry.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the reason for that is that implementation of spaces has changed since last year. So the spaces control works just with the newest columns.
Oh, okay.
That's the reason.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it kind of makes sense because I.
Repeat.
Okay, well, what I was saying is that the spaces control works just with the newest albums that you have in your spaces. That's because the spaces team made some changes with the backend. And I think that the albums that are shown in the control are just the ones that are after December or January, something like that.
And folks, this is Gabriel Corvera, part of our member of our three-man dev team for the controls.
It's not part of. This is the whole team, you know.
Well, we don't want him to get too big of an ego.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
By the way,
Too
Yuan,
much
we'll be in
details.
your session tomorrow.
Okay, that would be it. Thanks.
Rob?
Maybe I get 2 T-shirts if I ask 2 questions. In the demo, you had to go and get the latitude and longitude out of the text that you'd stored on spaces. It strikes me that there's a more generic need for a place to store metadata like that kind of stuff. And I just wondered whether you had any plans for a generic metadata store or maybe a triple store or something.
I'll take that. The question was whether there's going to be some kind of generic way to store meta information like latitude and longitude inside of spaces. You're standing next to the program manager whose name is John Bruno, who actually is working on spaces. And we've actually heard that feedback from a couple of folks. And it's great because you've conveyed the feedback directly to his ears. And we'll hope for an update. We'll look forward to it, John. So if there's no more questions, we'll just... Oh, there is a question. Yes, sir.
Any chance of plugging the live IDs into the ASP.NET provider model?
ASP.NET.
So the solution that we provided, the interface, basically what we've done besides the iframe is if you have a server there that has a database and you are decrypting the token to get the unique ID, clearly there would be more code there than within just our little application, which was just using single sign-in. So what we've basically provided is we provided basically code that you can copy and paste onto your website that's available in a whole bunch of different programming languages, including ASP.NET, Ruby. We have plans for the future to make it available in PHP, Java, etc.
And so those would be server-side scripts that would do the crunching on the server side.
Yes, it sure would.
Okay, so you can then take that code and factor it back into building your own ASP.NET provider or membership.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And one other one, any plans on this all folding into the info card? Or,
Hey,
card space?
that's a great question. I probably went by it too quickly, but on the sign-in UI that I showed you, that was the little third-party site sign-in UI. Don't do it. You would actually see use an information card on that sign-in UI, and that's because starting this summer, Live ID is going to accept information cards for sign-in as a beta program. So instead of using a password, a user can come to us and supply an information card, a self-issued information card.
Okay, so then does that factor back into the earlier question about getting information back as far as usernames, first name, last name, email, if that's attached to the info card that's being used?
So that is a really, really great question. So the way that we integrate information cards is we integrate it as another type of credential the same way that we integrate password. So what happens is that we process the authentication, we verify the credentials, and then we write out an authentication token for any website that uses us. And one of the values that we provide to all of the internal sites that use us as well as external sites that use us is we write out the same authentication token every time. So it doesn't matter if the user signed in with a password or if the user signed in with an information card, you have the same level of information. So in our first release of this third-party interface, you still only get the user's unique ID. As we move forward and rev that based on developer requests, we would look at making more information available through that, subject to the user's consent, and potentially it could come from the user's information card.
Great, thanks.
Don't forget that we'll have an open mic on Live ID on Wednesday? Tuesday?
Tomorrow. The open mic is tomorrow at 2:45, I believe.
Yes.
Lynn will be there.
Yes.
I will.
And you realize why we had multiple speakers. She's an expert on Live ID.
I'm not.
I'm not either. That wasn't scripted. So I think we're done. Please come and ask any questions if you have any. Otherwise, thank you for attending. Thank you so much.